throw that at you right at the middle of the meeting and see. Okay. I'm seeing a shaking of head right there, Melvin.
Yeah, we are already to the end and beyond the length of.
I'm under my wife.
Okay. Well, we have quorum then.
Yeah, I gotta try to chime in under me. So sorry about that.
No worries at all. No worries at all. Okay, I'm gonna stop that share. We had our little welcome intro music there. Everybody, now that we're a quorum and we're at time, let's get moving, I think. And folks will join us, but we'll make the most of our window that we have set here. And hi, everybody. I'm Jeff Landau, the Public Defender's Office, and also Racial Justice Coalition, part of the steering committee. Thank you, Nicole. Yeah, why don't I share screen again so that I have some links just as I did last time round. All right. So hopefully folks are seeing that list. It'll have a link to our current agenda, just as Nicole just sent, and then the county's page on background about our group and what came before, that org chart that I've walked us through a few times, just in terms of where do we sit in terms of the bigger structure of the county and how do the different pieces interact. Past agendas at that link, and then all the videos, which is, boy, there's a lot there, and it's, I almost got pulled into looking at old videos and go, wait a second, I can't do that right now. I need to prepare for today's meeting. But intriguing. Okay, so let me just invite everybody that's on the call to unmute for a moment as we pass around and introduce ourselves and the org that we're connected with, and then to pass on to someone else on the call. So I introduced myself, and let me pass over to Chris to introduce.
Good afternoon, everyone. Chris James here with the W. Haywood Burns Institute. And I might propose that the last person in every meeting from now on has to sing a song, since we, incorporating music, just there for your amusement and consideration.
Noted. I like this idea. Chris, would you hand to somebody?
Yeah, Cheryl.
Good afternoon. Buenas tardes. Cheryl Summit. Racial Justice Oversight Body. I'm on the Diversion Subcommittee, the Racial Justice Coalition, the Steering Committee. And I'm going to send it over to Ms. Patrice with a beautiful smile. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. So you know what? I'm good at giving a good smile, Chris. I don't know if I can hold a tune. So I might have to pass. Maybe I can rap a song or something. But anyway, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Patrice Guillory, ORJ Director. Happy to be here. Oh, I'm sorry. And I'll pass it over to Kiki.
Thanks, Patrice.
Hello, good afternoon. Kiki Williams, Probation Manager, very closely assigned to foster care, adult and juvenile investigations. And I too would not be singing. See how about, I can't see everybody. Yeah. Monique?
You said Monique, right? Okay, hi, I'm Monique Tate. I'm with ORJ, the new program coordinator.
Yeah, understand. And then
Is it me still?
Yeah, you're still on. It's still
okay. You. Sorry. Okay, so Monique Tate, ORJ program coordinator. I too will not be singing. It looks like we don't have a choir on this call, so thank you for having me. And I will pass it on to. Hold on, let me look and see who's on the call. I will pass it on to Melvin.
I'm still hopeful with the choir, by the way. Melvin, this is your chance.
No, not from the choir. We could do a big old band, and I'll be the choir guy with my lips moving, but no sound coming out. If that's Chris could take the lead since he brought it up and stuff, and he can kick it off, and then we can pass it like the old school robot type stuff and do the whole whoop, and then I'll just pass it to whoever.
Melvin dancing for sure.
Yeah, Melvin Russell with the probation department. It's good to see you all.
You too, Melvin.
And I will pass it to, I see Crawford on my screen. I don't know if he's still on his other call.
Yes, good afternoon. I'm Crawford Carpenter. I'm a member of CAB, and thank you for having me. I've got to pass it on to someone. I see I just came in late, so I'm not sure who to pass it on to. Ronell Ellis?
Thanks, Crawford.
Yep, Ronell, Health Right 360, Field Operations Coordinator, Reentry Network.
Thanks, Ronell. Let me pass to Emil.
Hi, everyone. I am a San Francisco educator and Bay Area community member and the mom of a systems impacted young man in Contra Costa. And I will pass this to Jill Ray.
Well, just to point out, especially since you didn't hear the intro, it's Crawford who must be singing because he was the last one to join the meeting per Chris's rules. And I will pass it to, I'm Jill Ray with Supervisor Candace Anderson's office, and I'll pass it to Alicia.
Love that. Thank you, Jill.
Hi, good afternoon. Alicia with Supervisor Diane Burgess's office in District 3.
Hi, Alicia. Let's see. How about Tanoe?
Hey everybody, how y'all doing today? Hope everybody doing well. The fact that I didn't hear nobody singing was very telling about this whole committee in the first place. No open-mindedness. But hey, also Jeff, you gotta start by example. Hope everybody doing well. I'm a community member. I'm not a part of no organization.
Thanks, Noe. Don't get me started. I will sing for sure. Some of you know. Okay. So has Nicole, please.
Nicole Popchek, Office of Reentry and Justice. And I pass it back to you, Jeff.
Thank you. Okay. So I think we've had an opportunity to introduce ourselves, and I believe that folks on this call are familiar with background history of our org, etc. So I would be inclined to bypass my general intro stuff and move us to public comment. Just take a little pause to see if there's anything to add to this discussion. We're sufficiently small, I think, that if it feels right later and not at this moment, that there'll be a chance, but this is a designated time. Okay, not seeing an unmute motion at this time. I'll move past that agenda item and just maybe I can confirm that everyone is seeing the page right now that has our agenda. It's up on, great. Okay, so we've just sailed past 1 and 2 there. And to orient us, we're set to go until 4:30 this afternoon. So then approval of record of actions. Let's just scroll down there together. You may recall that in August, we stopped midstream and we're not able to continue on with meeting. So my apologies for that interruption. And I will take the moment to say we won the trial. But moving right along from that, that I'll say this may be a good moment to just re-raise the point that I had before we got started. And I was saying to Kiki that it would be good for us, I think, to have a designated second chair or vice chair. And had just floated that possibility to her in that I think in particular, it's important that we make sure that if we do have quorum, that and if something interrupts, such as what happened last time around, that we're ready to continue moving without kind of a question of who's going to pick up right now. So I know that capacity is a real question and a legitimate thing to take into consideration. Melvin, I'm thinking of your comments with that too. So maybe before I even get to that, just broaching the subject, because I wanted to raise what happened in August. Several folks were here on that call. Okay, let's move back to agenda item 3, which is just reviewing. Now this will be the record of actions from July. It's a good thing that we have the video also to just confirm everything that's indicated here. Sometimes it's just making sure that we have all the actions that were recalled. I'll just note I was not present for the July meeting. All the more reason maybe it makes sense to have a second designated position. So I'll have to abstain from whether this is accurate or not. Are there any, before asking for a motion on the record of actions, any points that anyone has to raise, modifications, etc.? Not seeing anything. Is there someone who is prepared to make a motion to approve the minutes, or the record of actions rather? I would do it, but I can't because I wasn't there.
Jeff, and you, just to get some clarification, this is for July 8th, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
So just scrolling through this one here. Exactly.
Okay, I was here. I can motion to approve them.
Thank you. And a second, please. Was there someone who would second that motion? I see Ronell there. Is that right?
Yeah, I'll second
right.
that, Jeff.
Thank you. Any discussion further on record of actions before we take a vote? Okay, then I think we're prepared to do that.
Hey, Jeff.
I'll abstain.
Kiki.
Yes.
Ronell.
Yes.
Noe.
Abstain.
We need one more yes to pass because we are tied. We got 4 voting members and I have 2 yeses. And I did want to note that you don't have to be there to say yes.
Well, I haven't noticed any inaccuracy, and I am encouraged by seeing no indication of inaccuracy from my colleagues here. So I am prepared under the circumstances to modify my vote if it's not too late to yes.
Okay.
Parliamentarian here, we're all right? I think we're okay.
Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. My side note is that I always hated this as person dealing with meetings kind of coming up being like, well, we're talking about the minutes. We got to actually do something here. So we just passed that part, and it is important, I think, to keep track of what we've already done and make sure that we don't backtrack. We're just moving forward. Okay, but that said, that part is passed. Let's go back to our agenda, which is number 4, standing agenda item for JJCC updates. Here's where I usually turn to Kiki, and I know my interest is piqued by what Melvin was saying, maybe something coming.
So let me just ask. I noticed that says vote next to it, and I think that we did we vote and was it July or was it June to add it to the agenda, or do we need to do that today? Just trying to clarify.
To make sure that this is on the agenda, you mean?
Right.
It's set, so we're good to.
Okay.
I don't think we'll likely need to vote. It's just kind of in case.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So let's see. So the last time, and so just to be specific for anyone who is not aware, the subcommittee for JJCC that I sit on is the Prevention, Intervention, and Community Engagement, which obviously ties very closely to this one. And we last met on August 2nd. We now meet every other month, so we'll meet again the first week of October. And so before, in previous updates, I mentioned that the provider surveys that we developed went out. So they went out between the last 2 meetings. So on 8/2, we discussed that they were sent to 78 surveys were sent to 78 different contacts. At that time, during that week, we'd only received 8 responses. I actually was very optimistic about that because I was happy that we didn't receive 0 responses. And I have asked for an update. Unfortunately, I didn't ask for it too early enough in order to get you the number of responses that we've received, today. But as of a few weeks ago, it was 8 respondents. And the next plan that we discussed at that subcommittee meeting was for members of the subcommittee to sort of, we were going to divvy out the contacts who had not sent in their responses, and people were going to do actual hand-to-hand contact and reach out to the contacts that they themselves have provided and maybe some others to do a follow-up that is due by tomorrow. So by tomorrow, we will have collectively followed up with the remaining of the 78 providers to get their survey responses. It was pretty interesting because we actually, not in great detail, but kind of skimmed through the responses. And there was just a wide variety, and just the 8 people that have responded thus far, and the types of programs and services and populations that are potentially out there. And again, the survey's intent is to really make contact with those programs that somebody knows about, but maybe we don't know about as a county, to try to add to a really robust pool of resources, hopefully in the near future. So that's where we are now with that subcommittee. And if anybody has any questions, I don't know if I have any answers, but I will certainly take them down and get you some for next time.
Thank you very much, Kiki. That's really, I know, encouraging, I think, for us to be having that progress going with service providers and the survey responses. And I think it totally can build to the work that we're trying to have happen with the Community Capacity Fund in particular, but it probably will have ripple effects all over in terms of our ability to coordinate, provide services best. I just had a question about like the 78, and maybe you already said this, but just how did that come to? Meaning that's everyone that was outreached, or how did that list initially come together?
Right. So we, for example, as a subcommittee, we reached out to contacts. For me, for example, a couple of the pieces that I was really interested in getting services around were, education and mentorship. So, we kind of encourage each other to think outside the box. Obviously I work for probation, and so we might routinely go to one sort of set of types of resources, but I thought, well, what if we reached out to people in, the public health nurse's office and all these kind of random places that also come into contact with, children and families from a really young age and ask them, what kind of resources and referrals and programs do you use? Because again, the mission of this subcommittee is to, really focus on like primary and secondary level prevention. So we're looking at the resources that are necessary so that folks never even have to cross paths with law enforcement, looking at those really early on types of struggles and challenges. So collectively, we made contact with all the people that we kind of know from other agencies, and 10 or 15 people are doing this. And then I sent it out to people and said, hey, send it to everybody, And so we all kind of created this big web, tree. I think I shared it here. I don't know if it was our last meeting or the one before. And I was just going to add, kind of in line with your question, this is ongoing. So if anybody comes up with any ideas or think, hey, I know this little mom and pop program, that might be interested in completing this survey, we would still accept that, so do email me if you know of a program or organization that provides, any grand scheme of, just any kind of service to the community that might fall under that primary or secondary level of prevention. Send the contact, we add it to our pool, and then we contact them with the survey. So word of mouth, good old fashioned.
Yeah, right. Knowledge of people who have experience in community to know the places. That helps me understand, and I think that's it's exciting that there was that much intention with it, putting together the list, thinking outside of just the obvious and really reaching for more. So I appreciate that. Other comments, questions, anything from our group? Okay, well, thank you again for keeping us in the loop, knowing what's happening and advocating in that space as well as this one. That would bring us to, maybe I'll just want to say in the space here, number one, hi, Shayla and Antoine, welcome. We just did our intros real quickly of our names and orgs that we're with. So I welcome you if you'd like to unmute for a second and say hi.
Hello, everybody. I'm Antoine Watt, and I'm a part of the Safe Return Project. I'm a new organizer, and I'm here to learn and take notes.
Hi, Antoine.
And Shayla Bonner here, also with Safe Return Project and a part of the Racial Justice Oversight body. Just reining in on the parade, listening in for this subcommittee.
Always glad having you here. Thank you. I was thinking as we were receiving the update from Kiki, and I was remembering learning a little bit from Shayla at our Racial Justice Coalition meeting recently, that there had been some progress on funding, I think, for efforts to prevent youth from getting involved in the system, and exactly how that meets out, I'm not certain, but I did get word also in my office of a new position being funded. So I was wondering, is this somehow linked together? And it was in the concept of having preventative assistance and representation. I can get the name of what that position was I was mentioning to our coalition before, and there may be other folks that know what this is, but I think it was YEIP, and it was trying to prevent youth from getting into criminal justice system. Before I start searching for that and looking in my email, I'll just mention that was something I had heard about and know that, yeah.
I believe it's YEEP, Jeff. Youth, Youth Early Intervention Program with Jonathan Labas heading it up, and I know we have a rep on there and some community folks, but it's the early prevention of trying to get diversion prior to them coming across any threshold or even referrals coming to probation to even look at. So it's that very, very first phase.
Thanks, Melvin. Exactly, that's what I was struggling to think of. So that's an encouraging note as I see it, also just related to services and how we're going to try to utilize what we have in community to best meet needs. Okay, so I would propose that we move ahead to our draft community capacity fund guidelines, unless anyone has something that they would want to address first. Not seeing that, I'm gonna bring us to that draft language. Okay, and hopefully folks are seeing it here. I'll expand it a bit so that we're all able to see it. Okay. This language, just orienting ourselves, would be moving the process along for community capacity fund. And we've kept on track of progress of not just having this as a concept, but also determining the type of model that it would be, which is a hybrid two-part thing where there'd be a larger number of grantees initially and then a smaller number of grantees later, following the general model that we learned about from Alameda County. And this is going to steer the next directions. There's sometimes I have an instinct to just say, like, let's just write the thing and move ahead without as much thought. And then also taking the time to really think about the language here can keep us on mission as we move forward in the future, because sometimes that can happen with projects and it gets lost of what did we commit to and how is this, what's the mission here? So I think that's kind of the concept with this project is we're writing the guidelines to make sure that we're acting with intention and not just starting a project without being aware of what we want to do with it. So I'll maybe just invite Chris also to chime in here as I'm going to talk about the language that we have. I know that Chris, you and I did trade notes, I think before the July meeting it was, to try to make some modifications to what had been the initial language. So why don't I just take us through paragraph 1. I'm actually, I think, a little concerned if I just say, is everyone okay with this doc? It's not going through together as closely as we ought to just sometimes without kind of walking through a bit, it can get lost. So highlighting this first paragraph, it's supposed to be for existing groups, formal and informal. We use that language to be expanding. We're not trying to shut anyone out here. Program, services, supports. Again, that's broad language, trying to not close the door on anything that would actually be helpful to provide services. Adult and youth, community, preventing entry, re-entry, trying to be as broad as we can, not just preventing people from coming in, but back again to the system. And aiming to reduce racial disparities through investments in services. That, I would just highlight that last sentence as being pretty loose, meaning, well, how do we know that, what is exactly reduction and aiming to? We're not guaranteeing. So we couldn't guarantee, and it's hard to determine what amount is necessary, but I do think knowing that the language is loose, it's important to have something in there that's guiding proposals that we may have, like how is this going to be reducing racial disparities when we have that process going on, that should be part of the question with the decision makers keeping that in mind. So being aware that I'm doing quite a bit of talking, let me just staying with this first paragraph for a second to say, does anyone have concerns about the language as it is, feel like something should change in there? Maybe if for no other reason than to get me off the microphone for a moment. Chris, can I invite you if there's something that you feel like you have a targeted question for the group to just, if there's anything here, or perhaps to, if you have thoughts on second paragraph.
Yeah, I mean, I can take it from here. I don't have many, you know, sort of original thoughts about this. I've seen this quite a few times at this point, as have we all. But I did want to make sure, especially I think as we go into the latter half, like the last two paragraphs of this, I wanted to make sure that the language that Kiki came up with respect to the discussion we were having last time is here, because there was a copy and paste job for me out of the chat. So I think I copied it and pasted it and it made its way into this, but I just wanted to make sure that was the case, because it's been a while since we were having that conversation. Jeff, what do you?
Oh, sorry. What I was starting to do is pull up the agenda from last time so that we could do a comparison if we needed to. Okay. But is that, I know that would help.
What I'm remembering as we continue to talk and I was looking at it was, I think one of my concerns was in the first paragraph, we used the term formal and informal to describe the CBOs. Yes. And later, I think some language changes that Chris is referring to is where we kind of say, maybe in paragraph 4, developing and established, right? And just trying to make sure that we're sort of being consistent with how we're describing the differences and making sure that when any and everybody reads this as any level of provider, they recognize themselves as this is talking to me. And so I think we might have left off maybe somewhere along there with our discussion. And I think I might have suggested that we use the same language if we're talking about the same thing at the start and the end as far as the programs.
Yeah. I like that thought. That sounds lawyer-wise to me, the concept of let's not change the language unless we're actually trying to change the meaning. And if we're staying consistent, let's just use the same words. So that's a good thought. I am also looking at this and not seeing that kind of, there was a red line draft, was there not? That's what I'm thinking of. It kind of showed the language that was added. You remember what I'm thinking of, Chris?
Yeah, I don't remember which iteration of it that was.
I'm going back one more. Just stay with me, everybody.
Probably
we're going to do our internet tour here again. Okay. Fingers crossed. Yes, I saw it. Okay. So this will help us see which changes were made and kind of isolating what's the new language. And if I do that side by side here. Okay. We really want to see both of them, don't we?
Okay. Yeah, but if there is some, some wizardry with the keyboard or the mouse that you're aware of that's gonna, make you able to do that, go for it.
So I think if I do okay, so I'm hoping now that you're seeing two different pages here. I don't know if that's the case, but let me see. Oh, I know, that was disorienting. Okay. Are you seeing both of those screens now?
Yes.
These windows? Okay, we're getting there. Not exactly whispery, but this is the general concept. Okay. And they're as close to each other as I'm going to get right now. So it looks like the draft on the left it's certainly incorporating that first paragraph. So it looks like the language in the third paragraph was not added, right? Let's just make sure that it's something that we wanted to have or thinking that we'd like to include. This is the Community Capacity Fund is committed to providing CBO's support that is informed and relevant, including support provided by persons of color and or those with lived experience in the adult or youth criminal legal system.
I remember now what Chris also might be referring to is paragraph 3 in the current version was my humble attempt to combine all of that information in the previous paragraph 3 into one sentence, one concept, because it seemed to be a little bit repetitive. And so I was to put it all into one statement. So that was the goal.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
I'd say a lot repetitive.
Yeah. It makes it's a lot clearer to me also, and I think just streamlining is good. And as you're pointing that out, I'm seeing that the beginning of paragraph 3 is a bit modified, so it looks like it's incorporating the changes that you were proposing. And then at the very end, maybe we want to be saying inclusive of CBOs, both formal and informal, and take away the developed and established, or developing and established.
I think that was the question that we might have, well, my question was, you know, what is formal and informal to us might mean something different, right? Because we all like to make our own definitions as agencies. So I actually think that developing and established really tells you what we mean. And so maybe what we could do is just use those words in the first paragraph instead.
Okay. I like that thought. Let me move this window back. I was going to try to see if we could just make these changes right now based off of what we had as the update last time. Make it big enough so that we can all see it together. Okay. Formatting is a little painful, but that's not going to take too long, I don't think. Okay, because this way we can just make the changes and not talk about them and incorporate later. We'll just do it. So the concept was having developing and established rather than formal and informal, right?
Let's see Patrice's hand raised.
Yes, Patrice, thank you. Please.
Actually, it was. I can reserve my comment for I think more so for some of the latter paragraphs.
Okay.
Sorry.
No problem. Open invitation. So I just made a little modification there based on what Kiki was mentioning. So we have consistency between paragraphs 1 and 3. And that's the changing now this language, both developing and established. We've got the consistency there. How's everyone feeling about that? I like the change, but I want to make sure that everyone feels like this isn't missing the point somehow or not leaving out formal or informal. I feel like this accomplishes it. Chris, I see you're unmuted.
Oh, I think that was a holdover from my last comments. No.
Okay. I won't read too much into it. So that in mind, let's move ahead to last portion. I'm wondering, Patrice, maybe if there was something that you were reserving.
Yeah, so we're on the last paragraph. So, you know, just from the perspective of an organization that reviews, that leads RFPs and actually reviews proposals, I think we may want to clarify this last kind of clause here where we say, and we'll consider the goals and potential of each program, even if the application lacks polish in comparison to that of a more experienced CBO. I would think that the intent of this fund would be to actually support building the capacity of emerging organizations to not only compete for county level RFPs, but then to build them up so that they can, in fact, go after other potential grant opportunities. So I know through our office, we often like to provide some support and seed, in a sense, smaller CBOs, but we also want to see them grow to where they don't have to rely on county dollars or that one source of funding just to exist. So there may be a way we can rephrase that. I don't know specifically, but I do just want to highlight that you want to support building them up so that they can go after not just local level dollars, but also expand in their organizational development capacity so that they can actually reach more people, especially if they're a really great organization. They have solid programs and models. We're a big fan, obviously, of implementing evidence-based programs, or if they're an organization that can actually prove through their own innovation and creativity, developing their own evidence to show that they have the capacity to deliver really solid services that's making an impact. You know, that's where that kind of technical assistance could be really, really useful for our smaller groups.
Thank you for bringing that up, Patrice. I think there's a lot to kind of unpack in how we put that in. And it is important, the mindset framework that this is building self-reliance, independence, and then it's not going to be kind of the existence of the org would depend upon just this grant funding. I'm kind of feeling like maybe that comes in this third paragraph where it's saying providing support that's informed and relevant, and maybe the next sentence, something like that. Also, prioritizing something like that, the ability to obtain funding outside of the county or something like that. Thinking on the fly, but it's because if I'm trying to recapture or make sure that I'm understanding what you're saying, Patrice, it's kind of like we want to make sure that we're providing services to CBOs that is going to strengthen their ability to act independently.
Yeah, and to strengthen their own organizational, capacity to seek other sources of funding. Mm-hmm.
Others' thoughts?
Patrice, I like that, and I kind of wish that we could turn the lax polish into a more strength-based statement. And I think what you're suggesting is would help us do that. As somebody who reads RFP, like, how do you think I think what you just said was strengthen the organization's capacity to something. And is there a way like that we can turn lax polish into that as well? Because what lax polish is referring to in that part is that their application may not look as, spiffy as somebody with more experience. But I think there's maybe another way to say that is like, because I was just thinking, if I had a little organization of one or two, reading this and being told that I lack polish might not be easy to receive, but instead reading it and understanding that you really want to help me to be able to sort of compete with the larger organizations comes across better. And that's just my 2.5 cents.
Yeah, I agree with that because larger doesn't always mean better. That 2-person outfit could be the top notch and the most effective. Who knows? So yeah, the person they might take offense. What are you saying? Unpolished. We do great work over here. But yeah.
And to be honest, sometimes the larger CBOs are just well-resourced, right? And so they can hire grant writers and consultants and things of that nature to do the writing on their behalf. And it doesn't always necessarily mean that they could actually produce good work, but yet they had a team of writers that made a compelling case. And then therefore they were able to be successful in receiving that award or that grant. And they have folks that can push out a number of grants at many different, at one time for various funding sources. So for a more smaller mom and pop, doing 1 or 2 could really exhaust them quite a bit, especially if it's just relying upon 1 or 2 staff members to push it out, and they're also doing the work. So yeah, I don't know. I think the statement I mentioned earlier was, because Kiki, I know you were trying to recapture what I said. You wrote down part of it. I might have the second part in my head.
Yeah.
Can you reread what you called it?
So the part that I know that you said strengthen the organization's capacity to seek, and I have but I'm trying to remember. I think you said to seek.
I think I said seek other sources of funding.
Yeah, I think that is what you said. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so y'all are seeing as I'm having this language, just kind of trying to track what we're describing. So that would be the modification is taking away, even if the application lacks polish language, and changing, consider the goals and potential of each program, including strengthening their capacity to seek other sources of funding.
Because would you say, Patrice, that is kind of the opposite, more positive side of an application lacking polish? You know what I mean? See what I'm trying to get at? Like, what's the opposite of that? So instead of, we're saying even if you lack polish now, I think putting in there what the intent of the CCF is makes, you know what I'm trying to say? I'm losing my words.
Yeah, I got you.
Okay.
But I do think this paragraph, you probably want to
break it up. Yeah.
Yeah, because I think there's a couple of ideas running together here.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And what I did over here in my scribbles was I just put a period after RFP process.
Boom, we just did it at the same time.
Yeah.
Yep. And then the CCF will consider the goals.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. On the same track here. All right, that's a little bit more digestible when we break it into the two. We've got the consistency of the developing and established, and the both beginning and end there. We have the streamlined paragraph 3 to get rid of some of the duplicative. And we've modified the polished language for the reasons we were talking about. Patrice?
Just a couple of words to kind of strengthen I think what I was suggesting here. And what you have in bold, including strengthening their organization's capacity to seek various sources of funding. Let's do that.
Seek various.
Jeff?
Yes.
Somehow, sorry guys, but developing and established, I don't know, it just hurts my ears. It just doesn't read right. I understand what you're trying to say, but it just doesn't read correctly.
It feels too formal?
I don't know. Christopher, I don't know. It's just something about it. It doesn't read correctly. Is it that, and maybe it's the switch the words, something. It doesn't, it's the syntax, is something wrong with the words. Is it that you're talking about like emerging CBOs?
Right. It's.
I think you're talking about emerging organizations. I don't think you're talking about developing. I think you're talking about emerging ones, right? Ones that are just maybe newer than ones that are established.
Emerging.
I think it's emerging ones. I don't think you mean developing.
Do you see my synonym in icon here? Right? Boom. First thing for developing was emerging. So that if that resonates as being, it feels closer. I think emerging meets it. So I would be that change is fine on my end. Does that work for everybody else?
Yes.
Okay, great. And that if we change it in that way to emerging and established, does that sound, Cheryl, to you like it's addressing the, even because we'd still have established as the other?
Yes, and I think it's sorry guys, I'm getting ready. I have a PT appointment at 4. I think is what you're trying to say is people who are less experienced with is not the county RFP. It's responding to. It's not just the process, right? It's responding to RFPs, because I think that was the intent in saying less polished in presenting their capabilities to the county. Because it's not that they're not capable, it's not that they can't do the job, it's the presentation of those capabilities. In full disclosure, this is what I do. I'm a procurement officer. So is the other side of this. So I think it's not even less experience, it's the ability to demonstrate those capabilities in the, because it doesn't matter if, I guess I'm trying to figure out how the CCF, the capacity, how giving the money is going to change that.
I would just chime in to say that I think part of what we have in mind for the first phase, at least, and maybe for both phases, would be this educational cohort support component, so that it would need to be more than just a financial, that there would be educational and support component that comes along with it.
Yeah, and I think it needs to say that. I think it has to say something along that lines. If that is the intent, then it has to be very explicit that is the intent. Because when I read it, I didn't see this.
Yeah, I'm seeing thumbs up from Chris, and I think that that makes sense, that we do want to make sure that it's coming across that it's not just dollars.
It's got to be some mentoring. It's got to be some education. It's got to be some sample RFP responses. It's got to be, coming from somebody who reads solicitation responses, whether it's RFP, invitation for bid, request for quote. It's got to be, what are the trigger words? How do you present yourself? How do you demonstrate your ability in writing and or interviews? How do you demonstrate your capabilities to be able to complete the work that is indicated in the request for proposal or request for bid or request for quote? That has to come across in this, in what we're trying to do here with the fund. So I think that has to be a significant part of it when you're talking about like the mentor. So it should not be, I mean, I know this is a fund, but it's really a program, right?
Yes.
So it's really, so it's not just funding, it's actually a program. And I don't mean to throw a wrench into to this, but I am throwing a wrench into this.
This is the time for us to sort it out. So I think it makes sense to have the discussion, and it's not too late at all. This is the time. Patrice, I'm seeing your hand.
Yeah, I do want to echo Cheryl's point here. So I think it might be helpful if the committee is able to talk through what are the specific activities that you're hoping that this fund would fund necessarily. If it's going to be some technical assistance, if it's going to be some trainings involved, as you mentioned, some mentorship, grant writing workshops. What are some activities you're hoping to that will be accomplished through this? Because if it's, and I know it's being encapsulated as a fund, so that in and of itself makes one think that you are funding, right, either organizations or funding technical assistance to the organizations, or are you allocating, so I think really talking through what the activities will come either from this fund or the fund will fund. Its sort of operations can kind of get us a little bit more clear on the actual description of what's likely to take place here. I can also share with you all that ORJ about 2 years ago had an AB 109 capacity building program, and it was actually funded through our own capacity building funds. And what we did was we hired a consulting group, Jill Legacy, that pulled together a few different organizations that were already providing reentry services in the county. They had an application process. And so then there was a series of trainings that the consulting group provided to them, did one-on-one coaching with them. I want to say may have provided some support around grant writing, but nonetheless, there was a report out from that I can certainly share with this group if it will be helpful. And some of that information is still on our website as well. So anyway, I'm hearing Cheryl's point, and I'm in agreement with that there's probably a need to really think through what the activities will be so that you can have a better way of articulating how the fund will operate.
Yeah, that's all well taken. And I think it would be great to have the materials that you were mentioning, Patrice, of basically the history of Jewel Legacy here. I also am thinking to the presentation that we had from, I think it was Carol Burton with Jewel Legacy Group to this subcommittee. I don't know, it's been several months past, and there would be some content in there that we could try to use in framing our the sorts of services. And it I guess I have thoughts in that we want to have enough focus, direction in this that it's clearly indicating where we want to be, and also not too much that it's tying our hands with, well, you said you were going to be providing these types of programs and now it's something different. But I feel that at the very least, we do need to make some changes to try to incorporate this idea that it's more than money. I do think maybe it's not too late, worth considering a name change, because fund is inevitably going to suggest just money in a way. So brainstorming something like building or strengthening community capacity initiative or campaign or something like that. So just potential, building community capacity initiative could be the concept. And even if it's not that, it's the idea that maybe we're presenting this in a way that doesn't just suggest money. I have that training, and as an addition to the support, to make clear that training can't just be dollars, that has to be some sort of knowledge-based. And having said all that, I don't know if folks on the call now or in the meeting now feel that there may be some more specifics to incorporate this idea that it's what are the sorts of services. Part of it will be this very bottom, right, is strengthening their capacity to seek various other sources of funding. And part of that could be, well, you're just building capacity through giving more money, but we're trying to suggest that it will also be knowledge sharing. Thinking of language. Anybody? I'll invite to weigh in.
Well, I hate to put people on the spot, but I would be curious, and I don't know that this all has to be answered right now, but I'd be curious from, say, Ronell's perspective, right, given the work that he's doing, you know, like what sorts of things, you know, he or his organization would need in terms of capacity building, or what would be most helpful to not only his organization, but maybe other organizations, you know, that you end up partnering with or working alongside a good bit, as well as from Cheryl's lens, what, you know, do folks seem to need or lack, as well as, you know, from Kiki, if this is, you know, a type of question that's being asked in the survey and there is some level of information that might be gained from that survey at some point, hopefully in the near future, because we don't want to drag this out. But if we can get some insight, perhaps from participating organizations, about what kinds of, you know, what kinds of capacity building they need, or what sort of needs they have, that might lend itself to this conversation about what the programs should look like to go along with the fund.
Yeah, we're actually doing a bunch of that right now, to be honest with you. And we actually doing capacity building in many ways, adding staff and programs as we speak. Just added stuff last week. Basically, we just trying to reinvent some of the things that's been going on prior to COVID-19. With the shift in service access, we just trying to make sure that we reach out to everybody in multiple ways. But the TAPE population in particular, we just added a new group, twice a week group, Tuesdays and Thursdays from noon to 1:15, just so that we can have something for folks who are, especially from probation, are referred to. So, you know, because a lot of the services that we provide, we do a connection, and we do warrant handoffs, and we walk people through anything that they want to do. we link them to those resources and services, and then we, you know, kind of not necessarily coddle them, but we make sure that they're not left alone. So, but in terms of actual programming under our roof, we've made some changes to that to make sure that we had more services for that population because they need some things. How would you say that? They need more options, right? And so they're a little different than our other population, who is what I would say no longer in transitional age. And so we still, you know, toying with that and trying to find ways to reach that population and have them feel comfortable and you know, have a safe space, but also a comfortable and a familiar place, because we want to reach. Yeah, we want to. Good. So that's where we at with that. You know, what it looks like for us, especially with the TAPE population, is how can we provide, serve, and, you know, get them engaged. You know, they're not necessarily engaged with everything that we roll out based on personal preferences. And then also, you know, it is a voluntary program. You know, that is something that we always have to mention in some kind of way. And so they're not always inclined to voluntarily engage. So we incentivize. That's another thing too, incentives, right? Incentives get young folks engaged, you know. And what we recommended to probation most recently, our recommendation was inspire them to engage based on maybe a reduced probation term, right? So if you are engaged, I mean, just, you know, I deal with adults all the time, and I'm an ex-offender myself, and San Quentin, CDC even got on board with that. They reduced the sentences based on you getting degrees and going to college and things of that nature in incarceration. So if you can do it in jail and reduce a sentence, I mean, we should be doing it with folks who are out of jail or out of custody and engaged in services. I mean, that's like a no-brainer. It's like, you know, it's contradictory if we're not, right? So, and we want to incentivize them all the way through being self-sustaining, you know, from, you know, release to, discharge from probation. So, and that was well received by probation too. You know, a bunch of folks over there with Yuri and all of those folks that we work with definitely was saying, you know what, that is something we want to definitely put on the table, especially for the TAPE population, and probably all of the folks who are difficult to get engaged on their own. So, but it looks, you know, it has a lot of looks, Chris. Not just that one, but multiple ways that we can, you know, start, you know, light a fire under folks and get them, you know, excited about their own progress, right? Because I think once folks, especially the TAPE population, once they discover that what I'm doing is working, because it's hard to convince. I was a young adult myself, so I went through Walden House. You know, I had already been to, you know, CDC and all that, but even in my addiction and turning my life around, I started to discover that actually what I was doing, which was 180 degrees from what I was used to, once I discovered it was working and that it was keeping me out of incarceration and it was keeping me from, you know, interaction with the police, and it was, you know, preventing me from being broke and all those things, it was like, this may work, right? This just might have something, you know, some legs to it. So, and that's where I try to, you know, push folks that I know are coming from those, that ilk, where you want to be. You want to start to get to where, you know, this becomes normal and what you was doing becomes abnormal. So, but the look around that with funding and things of that nature is having access and, you know, capacity building and funding where you can be flexible with the services that you are providing and not be one-dimensional. Even though we have multiple agencies out here and resources, we consider ourselves like a connection agency, so reentry network. So we want to make sure that whatever we're doing with our participants, we have the flexibility to move around, you know, and offer different types of services so they can all be reached in their own, you know, personal way. Because this, even though this is a large program, it's every person that comes to us has an individual, you know, pathway, right? Even if we have providing services for all of those participants, each one has their own way that they need to go. So we don't shy away from that. We want to make sure that this is a tailored, you know, situation, that you're not coming here and we're going to drop you in, you know, a square peg in a round hole. So, but in asking me fielding that question from you and trying to, you know, chime in and contribute to what you might be looking for around answers is definitely that. And I also agree with what Patrice talked about with the, you know, all the agencies do have some funding in place, and it's always good they get extra funding for extra things. But yeah, we want all our CBOs to be, you know, fully self-supporting and self-sustaining in that way. And they probably all will be at some point, you know, but definitely, you know, that's the intention, get them where they need to be.
Thank you, Ronald. A lot of wisdom in there. Chris, we need to do this more often where you just invite folks to unmute and share, because I feel like I was learning there. And you just have, right, your perspective for a bit on what this could look like was refreshing to me. I'm glad that you took the moment to talk.
Yeah, right on.
And it's beautiful, the idea of like truly individualized support and outreach. And man, I mean, I feel like if we're getting toward having that in kind of traditional spaces, then we've made a lot of progress in service delivery and how we reach out to people, and understand that if you're really committed to good outcomes, then you need to not just tell someone to do something, but find a way to meet them and stay with them. Yeah. Because we all need that, right? We all need that type of support in life. So that was helpful to me. What do folks feel, other responses, follow up on how we can kind of translate some of that wisdom content into this doc? You see, I have the monetary, non-monetary thing there, which is already sounding like lawyer. It's not really like accessible, financial, non-financial, something that's saying not just money, okay? So that could be a potential add-on. And maybe, yeah, I would think it's in these last two paragraphs, somehow including the concept of including but not limited to ability to provide services or to improve service access and engagement, something like that, that's kind of filling in a little bit. I'm just gonna start writing and then see how people respond to that. Get the ball, keep moving.
So just a thought is what I think I've heard from a few different comments, though, is that sort of the underlying thing is that money gives you the power to enhance many things about your program, right? Whether it's education so that you can present you can demonstrate the work that you're doing in, a more sort of comprehensive manner, or staffing so that you can provide more services to more populations or more areas or whatever. So it seems that the first attempts were just being real, right? About the fact that money is going to get you more, for your more abilities for your program, whatever your unmet needs might be, so that you can expand or whatever, build. And so that's the only issue I have with kind of, I think maybe in my suggestion in the chat, what I kind of was getting at is if we establish the intent, even if it is to strengthen the capacity for funding, we could maybe then say what that funding kind of means to these organizations and their abilities, something like that. I just don't know that because support is support. So I guess I'm just a little worried about breaking it down to monetary versus non, because honestly, the monetary helps you to get the non-monetary, you know what I mean? So it's the money kind of behind it. And that's what I often hear, just talking to smaller providers. For instance, a lot of you know that I'm in charge of foster care for the probation department. And a lot of the smaller, old-fashioned group homes that were not able to convert to STRTPs had a lot to do with money and their ability to meet the demands of a reforming system, and they had to close. And it's unfortunate because I love those kind of programs, So just some thought about maybe there's a way that we can say that, by increasing your ability to receive funding or from us or anybody, it in turn is going to, our intent is that you would be able to do X, Y, and Z, whether it's, demonstrate your abilities in writing, expand your program or population, whatever the intent ultimately would be.
And also need-based, right? So what does, that specific program need to capacitize, right? So, they might say, oh, we're doing great in all these areas. However, there is one area we fall short in. And if we can get support in that, whatever it may be, maybe it's advertising, maybe it's, maybe they need the word out more, or to be connected to more agencies. We don't know what that may be per agency, but yeah, right. I mean, we don't want to just wave that flag, right? And this is all the only way we're going to help you. Need basis is, I think, could be something to think about too. Is like, hey, this funding is for need. We also concerned about need base. We don't just want to throw money at it, right? But if specific programs have need, then we want to fill that need so they can capacitize, so they can be better, or they can grow, or they can provide more opportunities to our participants. And basically saying what you just said, Kiki, but like you say, kind of narrowing it down to some, need-based type of, dialogue, jargon or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
I'm appreciating both of those comments, and trying to think of how we can incorporate together. It's what I'm hearing is that we can't lose funding as a focus on this. And before I keep talking, Patrice, I see your hand.
Yeah, if you could scroll up just a little bit back to where it says monetary and non-monetary.
I ended up just taking that monetary, non-monetary out for a second because I responding to Kiki's comments. We're kind of on the fly here, but I could put back.
No, don't. I'm thinking here in this sentence, you could say something to the effect of the CCF will emphasize and commit to providing support to CBOs that will include training, mentorship, one-on-one coaching, technical assistance, and seed funding, among others. Just kind of a generalized listing of potential supports. And you can even say that commit to providing support to CBOs. That may include, put the word may in case you can't do all of it, that may include, specialized training, mentorship, one-on-one coaching, one-to-one coaching, technical assistance, all things we could possibly think of that we know an organization would need in order to expand their capacity.
I was starting to get some of this together. This is good. I like specialized training, mentorship, one-on-one. What was the wording? You were saying one-on-one. It wasn't support, one-on-one. I can't recall. And technical.
Oh, sorry. One-on-one coaching and technical assistance. Sorry. Yeah.
Thank you. And technical assistance.
And you may want to include seed funding. I personally think that that would be awesome if this fund could actually at the end of, whatever series of trainings or what have you, you deem certain emerging organizations really having the ability or seem to be very promising in their future work. It'd be great to be able to provide them with some seed funding.
Mm-hmm. Well, why don't we put it in there and see about if folks want to take it out? But it's now that seed funding is there. We'll
And I'll add one more thing, that seed funding is so crucial in that for any organization that, I'll just speak from the county RFP process. Most contracts are on a cost reimbursement basis. So if you're an organization that doesn't have sufficient reserves to then start up your new program or service, usually within that sort of 3-month, 6-month window, you're already going to incur some costs that you will have to bill later. You have to expend on those costs, bill later in order to get reimbursed. So seed funding will actually help with any startup costs for emerging organizations that don't have sufficient reserves. So that's a compelling argument for why this fund should be well resourced.
How's everyone doing? I'm incorporating. I don't want to get out ahead of myself and making changes. I want to make sure that this is all staying on the path that we have already, but also incorporating these worthwhile additions, changes. Made some changes to that paragraph. Let me just read that out loud and see how that sounds. The CCF will provide support to CBOs that is informed and relevant, that may include specialized training, mentorship, one-on-one coaching, technical assistance, and seed funding. The CCF is committed to supporting programs run by persons of color and or those with lived experience in the adult or youth criminal legal system. Just staying on the path of, if I turn this into one sentence, it's going to get too much, but we're keeping the concepts there. Appreciate that indicator, Kiki. Thank you. How's this feeling, everybody else? Any concerns on, right? We're filling in some of this. I think if I'm reading this, even with, I know my eyes have seen it a bunch of times, so it's hard to pretend like I'm seeing it for the first time, but it looks like on paper, there's a number of words here that are suggesting not just money. This means more. And also it has some flexibility for what it would ultimately look like. Yeah, Ronell, I see that. And right, we all need to end at 4:30 because we committed to doing that. So fair notice.
Well,
and,
if I can,
please.
it's before folks jump off, because we really needed to tackle agenda item number 8, which was sort of the future work planning and coordination. If I can we jump to that really fast?
Yes.
I know we may have to table this vote here. So a couple of things. We are preparing for the executive order on utilizing virtual mediums to meet for advisory bodies to expire at the end of this month, which means all advisory bodies, oversight bodies, and the like will have to move into in-person meetings effective October 1st. So our office has worked with the county administrator's office to secure space downtown at the new administrative building for all our job meetings, including all subcommittee meetings. So your meeting time and dates will not change, but the location will. So just wanted to give folks heads up about that. And if that would add a conflict to you in attending meetings in person, please let myself or Chris or Nicole know so we can prepare for that. There can be a virtual option, but there's some limitations around that, and we can, and that office space has the technology to allow us to do so. So we can make it work, but there's some considerations you might want to consider before, if we were to go that route. So anyway, I just wanted to let folks know about that will be affecting all of your meetings starting in October. In the event that the executive order actually gets extended, we'll continue with our Zoom meetings. We will certainly let everyone know in advance of the direction to go.
Thank you, Patrice. That was important that we did cover, and we just know where we are for upcoming meetings. Respecting everyone's time, knowing where we are, I think we need to freeze here to know that we will have our next meeting in October, that I'm going to reach out to folks on this group to see what makes sense for potential second chair position or vice chair, to have us at the ready in case we need someone to step in, as had happened last month. And right, let's communicate between now and the next meeting in the ways that we're permitted to, utilizing our assistance from ORJ and Burns. So my thanks to everybody. Last word from anyone before, as we're at this minute? Open microphone. Thank you all. We're at time. Have a good rest of the day. Talk to you soon.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you.